This is Alex Rodriguez from Security/Professionally Evil, and this week we're going to be going over in our bash trick series about how to use the time command. Last week was a little bit longer of a video, so I figured I'd take it a little bit easier and take a little bit lighthearted of a topic to go over compared to STD out and STD error, which will probably be next week. So let's go ahead and dive into the code. Maybe. Oh. Yes. I'm sorry. I clicked the wrong link. Alright. So, the prerequisites are the bash video. Link is right there. I figured I'd throw in the image for the video just to make it a little bit more colorful because it's a little bland. Written instructions there, and then programs that we're going to be using during the exercises. Again, optional but recommended. So the why, I use bash commands all the time. So sometimes I want to know the execution time of a command, and if I don't want to have to pull out a stopwatch phone app to time how long the actual command lasts for, you can use the time command to identify how long the execution time is, and also how long the execution for user space and system or kernel space runs for. So you can do, secondly, benchmarking for how efficient your commands are, so that way whenever you have a few commands that are chained together, you can identify which ones are more effective and take less time. And lastly, just cause, sometimes using the time command is fun to identify how long a command takes to run. So, alright, we've got our examples, and I'm in my bash tricks VM. And we're going to do bash to get into the Docker container. And then we're going to do help. And one of the things that you can see is that there is a built-in time command. So if we do help time, move me out of the way here. There we go. If we do help time, you can see that it says time tacp pipeline. So we're going to go over that in a second. So report time consumed by pipeline's execution, and then tacp is the portable POSIX format. So if we just type the word time, then you can see that it took 0 seconds. And then just to showcase the portable time format, you can do that it does is, instead of it being spaced out to look nice, it's more machine readable and you delimit on space. So that's what the tacp is for. So the execute pipeline, that we're going to get into in a little bit, but it's important that you see that it says pipeline instead of command. So next we're going to do help. Oh, we already did help time. So one of the things that, honestly, even before I started this video, I didn't realize is that there's actually 2 different versions of time on most Linux systems. So there's the bash built-in version of time, which if you use bash or another shell that has a built-in version of time, you're most likely going to be using that. But there's also a time executable that is on the system. So if we execute that, which is essentially you just typing here's our time, same thing. That's what I did up there. The other one is a short bashism to execute the previous command, and I wanted the full path, so which is what the command outputs. I'm trying to point with my finger like you can see me pointing. The which time command outputted the full path for time. So the $parentheses expands this execution into the full path. So I just wanted to execute the full path of time, which is what I did here. So 2 different ways to accomplish the same thing. So the time command here is BusyBox's version of time. Now if we do exit and then which time, same thing here, this is the GNU version of time. So there are different, as you can see, the BusyBox version of time, since we're using a I forgot the name of the type of container. Alpine container in here instead of the PE command. That's going to have the BusyBox version of time, which has different flags than the GNU version of time. So it is just subtle nuances, but could affect your actual command formatting and is something to be aware of. Alright, so we're going to get back into the container. So we can identify that the time that is built into bash is actually going to be the first one that we execute unless we specify the time version on the system. And we can identify that by doing the type command. So the type command and then the tact flag outputs a single word for what the actual command that we will execute is. So interesting. In my test, this was not keyword, this was built-in. Alright. Either way, you can see that it's not the executable time, is the point that I was trying to get across. So if we do type A time, you can see, okay, there we go, shell keyword, that the time shell keyword and time is also the executable. So you can do the tac A flag for type to show all the different variations or possibilities for the command time. Alright, so now getting into the actual command itself that we've clarified the different versions of time. We're going to do just a time, if I can type, echo. And as you see, it took 0 seconds for everything to run. But if we do time sleep 3, which the sleep command essentially just waits for the time that we've specified, you can see that it says real time, which was the amount of time that it took, and then user time was the actual amount of time that the CPU and user space took to execute. So now we're going to get into the thing that I was talking about for pipelining. So in the last video we talked about stdin, which I'll leave a link to that in the resources for the GitHub and also at the bottom of the video for the previous one. We talked about stdin and how we can use the pipe character to send input from one command to another. So now we're going to just paste this command in, and you can see that the tr command executed while the time command was still counting. So you can see real 2 1. It took 2 seconds. So to show you if you want to execute multiple commands based on either if it succeeds or fails, or you just want to execute them in sequence, you can do this to test it out, and you'll see that the time command only counted from before the ampersand. So you see the hello world, and then you see not now, which not now is after the amperstamps, which is a conditional for saying as long as the first one succeeds, continue. So you can do the same thing with something like this, and you see that the not now is still after the semicolon. So if you want to execute multiple commands in a row, you need to surround the commands with brackets, and that'll execute everything inside of a subshell. So that one subshell will get timed for everything that's inside of it. So then you saw everything else is showing just 0 seconds for echo. Now, well, it still says 0 seconds, but now you can see that not now is inside of the actual timing sequence compared to afterwards. So it's getting timed because it's in the subshell, and so it then times everything inside the subshell. So one thing to note about subshells is that I haven't found the shell check link for it yet, but there are sometimes modifications that if you do them inside of the subshell, they don't get represented in the full. Like if you declare a variable inside of the subshell and you don't have it declared outside of the subshell, it won't carry over from inside to the next command that you want to try and execute. So that's just something to be aware of. I'll leave a link to the, as you can see, the placeholder for that. I'll leave a link to the subshell warning from shellcheck, but just something to be aware of now that I'm telling you about subshells. We're going to go into subshells a lot in a future episode. But another example of being able to use the time command specifically for pen testing or even sysadmin work is using nmap command. So we're going to install nmap really quick, and then while nmap does technically show you how long it takes to run a scan, down here 1.68 seconds, this says the amount of time that it took to actually scan that one host, or however many hosts you list. So the actual execution time of nmap, though, is not recorded in the scan. So it's just the execution of the scan, not the full execution of the nmap program. So if you want to do the execution of the full nmap program, you can do the time command beforehand, and you see it says 2.53, but really it was 2.55 for the whole command to execute, and also outputting everything as nmap normally does. So that's the time command. I left a resource for what's the difference between CPU and system time, which is the difference between user and sys in the time results. And then I also left a link to the video for the nmap runtime commands. So if you want to learn more about how you can interact with nmap while it's executing, you can check out that link. And I'll link that in the YouTube description as well. Alright, well, I think that's everything. And I will see you next Bash Tricks video. Take care, have a good day.